My dad, so our family, okay. My family, me, mom, dad. That's it. No previous marriages, no other children, just our little triangle, plus a ridiculous amount of cats. So my dad died in May. He actually died from Guillain-Barre, which is very unknown. He had gone through chemotherapy. He went through chemotherapy because he had gastroesophageal cancer. So they took out 2/3 of his esophagus, and they took out a portion of his stomach, but it was really just the sliver. So a lot of stomach cancers are now in the top of the stomach, and they're going up into the esophagus. So instead of seeing just stomach cancer or just esophageal cancer, it usually starts in the stomach and is starting to go upward. So they were able to get all the cancer out, plus the lymph nodes and everything. So he was okay, minus having like a sock for an esophagus, because they had to stretch his stomach all the way up to his esophagus. So the food would go in and it would just beep, slide down most of the time. So he was good after that. Then after chemotherapy, I'd say maybe 7 months later, he got pneumonia, but it was so mild, like you couldn't even tell he had it. And so the doctor put him on an antibiotic. He didn't even go to the hospital, nothing like that. So because of the paraneoplasticity that most likely occurred because of the cancer / chemo, it sparked an autoimmune response where the body's attacking itself called Guillain-Barre, or people have called it Guillain-Barre, even though that's not even how it looks or is spelled. So the nerves, your nerve has your axon, it also has your myelin sheath. The myelin sheath can be affected through Guillain-Barre by being, I don't know if it's broken down or if it's almost like turned off. They have to repair themselves. Or the axon can be affected. Obviously, the axon is a lot bigger and a lot more functional in your nerve. So if that's affected, it takes a lot longer to recover. So my dad had axonal Guillain-Barre. What it did, within 12 hours, he had worked out that morning at the Y, came back home, started feeling tingling sensations in his outer limbs, in his hands and his feet. And he was telling my mom, they went to the hospital to get it checked out, possibly neuropathy. Didn't know what was going on. They said, you can stay here, we'd like you to stay, but of course he opted to go home. A couple hours later, couldn't move his legs, couldn't move his arms, called 911, came in, picked him up, put him in the ambulance. By the time he got to the hospital, they were in a waiting room and he couldn't breathe. He said, I can't breathe, I'm gonna die. And doctors and nurses ran in the room and they had to intubate him because his lungs stopped working. Heart was fine. So it got to the point where he couldn't move anything in his body, not even his eyeballs. But he could feel everything. And he was completely cognitively aware of what was going on. It took a couple days for us to actually convince the doctors that it was Guillain-Barre, because it's not as common, especially when this severe. So it took 9 months over time. He's there, you know, but he was able to get movement pretty much mostly in his face, shoulders, and part of his upper arm and part of his leg. But he still couldn't completely breathe on his own, and he couldn't use his voice box. He did twice, but then his lungs would start contracting in response. So after 9 months of that, you actually can fully recover from this, by the way. There's like 3-year-olds that have gotten it this bad, and they just recover, and they can get back to full mobility. Older you are, the harder it is. He was 70. So it got to the point where he started developing bed sores. Not just at fault from the hospital, but you know, when you're on your back and you're being shifted from side to side, it's literally like being a quadriplegic. And the bed sores got so bad that his body couldn't recover from the Guillain-Barre because they were trying to focus on the bed sores. And everything was just at a standstill. And the three of us, me, mom, and dad, decided that we were gonna take him off the ventilator. You know, he'd have morphine, and that was that. So we all three had to consciously talk about this and decide this. So I started learning as after any parent or anyone, a family member dies, you start to learn more things about them after their death. And I started to reflect back on what he had done all of his life. I will tell you right now, his resume is literally in a binder that is this thick. He is an educator. He has gone all around the world. My parents didn't even meet until he was like 40 and she was 37. So he had done all of this living, and he had redone all of these programs. He literally helped build the music department at IUPUI in Indianapolis, Indiana. So program design, I would say, was his forte, but such an incredibly intelligent man. His IQ was a lot. I mean, I didn't get that part, unfortunately. But at this point in my life, I told him the day that we knew he was gonna die, I said, you know, I wanted you to see me do all these things. I wanted you to see me get a doctorate, just like he has, and all these things. And he just looked at me and he mouthed, he said, don't stop. And I knew at that point, like, there was nothing I could do. He just wasn't gonna see any of this happen. So that is what motivates me, not only when he was alive and everything he wanted for me. I was the center of his entire world. So my career at this point, even though I know he's not gonna see any of it happen, he would say to me, you're gonna be okay, you know? And I would tell him, Dad, if you die, I'm not gonna be okay. You'll be okay. And I said, okay, fine, whatever, it's not gonna happen, sorry. And I'm not okay at all. I cry all the time, or I hold it in and I try to function, but I'm totally not okay. But I also know that he'd be really frustrated with me if I allowed that to affect how I go through my career. And now, of course, I did laugh. I said, darn it, now I have to get a doctorate. Like, I said this and now I have to. So that's definitely, you know, there were some jokes aside for all of that. But, you know, it's sad when you see somebody that has done so much for the world be taken and still want to live so badly. And I just know that after all that he's done and all the time and energy he spent in my life, that I have to honor that, because if I died, I would want the people in my life that I've spent time on or care a lot about to say, okay, well, can you not just sit and like get depressed for a few years and do nothing, but instead take all of those things that I've instilled in you and use them. Cry when you need to cry, do what you need to do, but don't stop, literally. And that's what he said to me. And so I just keep telling myself, okay, well, you just do what you gotta do.